Nintendo needed to move quickly and quietly. They had to avoid alerting either Maxwell or Atari, who were about to have the video game console rights snatched from under their noses.
We told all of our employees that we were going to Japan, and I think only one employee at Nintendo of America was aware of where we were actually going.
In Moscow, they signed a deal worth $500,000 in guaranteed royalties and 50 cents on every cartridge. Over 30 times what Stein had first offered the Russians, but a fraction of what the game was worth to Nintendo.
When we flew back across to Seattle, every time I looked at Arakawa and he looked at me, we just started laughing because we knew we had not only the handheld rights, but we had the home video game rights as well. And at the same time, found a way to really give it back to Atari Games.
Back in Moscow, the pressure was piling onto Belikov.
23 марта я получил этот телекс. Длинный такой. У нас факса в то время еще не было. Этот телекс был послан Кевину Максу, в котором он сообщил, что вопрос, что я совершил ряд ошибок, что вопрос поднят будет во время предстоящего визита в Лондон президента Горбачева. Здесь шли угроза от угрозы. То есть это уже был не бизнес.
It was two very powerful sides or organization fight for my small game. We got in a very sharp and hot place.
Потом был звонок от человека, который занимался подготовкой визита Горбачева, который настоятельно предложил мне немедленно лететь в Лондон, стать на колени перед Робертом Максвеллом и умолять его ни слова не говорить Горбачеву, потому что иначе, если он скажет хоть одно слово, меня просто больше не будет. Это были дословные слова. Ощущение у меня, естественно, было чисто человеческое. Мне стало страшно. Потому что я понял, что это как, знаете, попытаться танк руками остановить. Вот он движется, попробуйте его руками остановить. Я понял, что включили уже, бездушную машину, государственную, которая совершенно не интересует никакие доводы.
Оказалось, что это
But Belikov had history on his side. Gorbachev's reforms meant that the state machine was losing its grip on power.
Командно-административная система тех, кто ей поклоняется, не сдает позиции без боя.
Я, конечно, понимаю, что здесь повезло мне, что это был 89-й год. Если бы это было бы, как я понял, 88-й год, история была бы другая. Я уверен в этом.
In America, the battle for Tetris was only just beginning. A jubilant Nintendo plunged the knife in.
First thing we did was to send a notice to Atari Games advising them that we had the sole home video game rights to Tetris, and putting them on notice of that and directing them to cease and desist from any marketing or production of Tetris, knowing full well that they'd go nuts.
Atari Games were not about to take this lying down. They had already invested millions preparing Tetris for market.
One of my associates called to say that we had just been sued by Atari Games. So they took the first step and they sued us and claimed that they had the exclusive rights to Tetris.
All of our experts, our legal counsel, were all saying full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes. There's no inkling that we were wrong.
the trial between Nintendo and Atari was set to commence in November 1989. Nintendo had prepared Elog's Nikolai Belikov as their key witness.
Перед моим отъездом меня пригласили в Государственный комитет по вычислительной технике и информатике. Вот, и сказали, если вы проиграете суд, то будет создана специальная комиссия, которая рассмотрит вопрос один. Сколько миллионов американских долларов потеряло советское государство от ваших непродуманных действий?
Belikov joined Hank Rogers in San Francisco, where they waited to testify. Both had a lot resting on the outcome. In the end, they were spared the witness stand. The judge made a summary judgment which granted all video game rights to Nintendo.
It made both Mr. Arakawa and I feel wonderful. Just great.
There was jubilation, of course. Well, on my part, I got to keep the rights, so I had a lot riding on it.
At that point in time, Atari games had several 100,000 Tetris cartridges for play on the NES that were now worthless.
We were in absolute shock. We had cartridges ready to ship and firm orders, and we were suddenly enjoined from shipping them. We were absolutely shocked and dismayed.
Хэнк сказал, Николай, мы победили, поедемте, я вам покажу Сан-Франциско. Я помню, включил на полную мощность приемник, мы нарушали все. Он носился на этой машине по Сан-Франциско, а там горы. Я был, честно говоря, в шоке. Мне было все замедлено. Вот эта радость, она для меня пришла намного позже. Стал страх, испуг уходить. Я могу возвращаться обратно. Потому что я вернулся в любом случае, но я могу возвращаться.
The real winners were Nintendo. To date, Nintendo dealers across the world have sold 8 million Tetris cartridges on the Nintendo Entertainment System.
The people at Mirrorsoft and Atari Games were simply incompetent. They didn't do their homework, they didn't do what they should have done, and far from taking advantage of them, it was simply competent people taking advantage of some incompetent businessmen.
By the time Atari figured out who to blame, it was too late. On the 5th of November 1991, Robert Maxwell disappeared over the side of his yacht, leaving a company ridden in unseen debt and £440 million missing from the corporation's pensions fund.
After Mr. Maxwell disappeared, and it was like a house of cards that just sort of crumbled to the ground, and everything that we thought we were looking to as indemnification and safety was basically non-existent.
As Atari's fortunes continued to wane, Nintendo went from strength to strength. Tetris was key to the success of Game Boy, which has sold 70 million worldwide. But despite all that happened to his game, as the 80s drew to a close, Alexei Pajitnov had yet to receive anything from Tetris. He was still working at the computer center.
К сожалению, владельцем программы, в то время это был Советский Союз, еще раз подчеркиваю, в общем, был вычислительный центр, поэтому особых доходов с этой работы Леша и не рассчитывал получить.
Даже вот Пажитному заплатить хорошую премию мы были не в состоянии. Эти цифры надо было согласовывать с руководством, с президиумом Академии наук.
But the fame that Tetris had brought Alexei meant that he could aspire to life beyond the computer center.
After the Tetris success, I don't want to be very much involved in pure scientific stuff. I realized that games might be a very big part of my activity as well.
In 1991, with help from his friend Hank Rogers, Alexei was offered the opportunity to move with his family to the United States. Here lay the promise of taking control of his own destiny and that of the games he developed.